Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Book Time with Elvis, with me, Mark. I watched Vin's video this morning over at Revenant Reads, and he was talking, he was doing the tag about tags, and he was talking about the lack of non-fiction tags. And I thought to myself, well, why not make one? So I did. I hope it's alright, and I hope it's appreciated. I decided to go along with the theme of life stories. So looking at biographies, autobiographies, diaries, letters, memoirs, all that kind of stuff. And so I made this the life stories tag. And there are 12 questions. I hope it's not too many. I'm sure some of the questions, of course, are not original, but maybe in this format it might have a bit of originality about it. So let's get cracking. Of course, I will tag at the end of the video some other people, and I will write all the information, including the questions and everything below. So let's start. Question number 1. Do you have a preference for biography or autobiography? Personally, I have no preference. I think sometimes, though, the problem with autobiography is it is only the story told from that individual's point of view, but then in some cases that can be great because that person was actually at a particular event, so they would know best, whereas perhaps on occasion biography can be more balanced. So that's what I think about that. Number 2, do you gravitate towards a specific area like sport, celebrity, history, etc.? Well, I absolutely love history, and so I tend to go more towards history. However, I'm open to reading biographies, life stories and things about sport, travel, especially sports like rugby, which is my favourite sport. So I occasionally do read biographies and autobiographies of people involved with rugby. Celebrity, it's not my normal cup of tea, but I did actually read a fantastic book last summer called The Divine Feud, and it was a dual biography of the actresses Joan Crawford and Bette Davis, and I found it fascinating. Actually, I really enjoyed learning about Hollywood in the so-called golden age, and also these two rather remarkable, yet stubborn and quite sometimes aggressive women. But it was really interesting. So if you haven't read it, you should give it a go if you like that kind of thing, or even if you don't, you might be surprised. Number 3, have you ever read the life story of someone and in doing so changed your opinion of them for better or worse? This is quite a difficult question, even though I made it myself, and I couldn't really come up with any example other than I read the biography also in the summer of an English actor, Dame Margaret Rutherford, who came to acting late in life, and she's probably best remembered for being in the original Miss Marple films, the old black and white Miss Marple films, and I believe she won an Oscar as well for her performance in the film with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, The VIPs. Fantastic actress, a fantastic character actress. Now, I always liked her, but having read her biography, I really grew to love her as a person. She was really a fantastic, generous and interesting person who suffered with a lot of mental illness and other problems associated with her appearance and things like that. But she really had a heart of gold and was a fantastic woman. So, that definitely is an example of how my opinion changed, but changed from being a high opinion to an even higher opinion. Next, number 4. Must you always know who the person is before picking up their life story? For me, that's not important. However, if I don't know who they are, I might miss that book. So in which case I would rely on people's recommendations when they say, hey, Mark, you should check out biography of so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, who's that? And they say, oh, they did this and that. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I'll give that a go. I quite often come across life stories through reading other books. I might read some history book and think, oh, this guy's interesting. I wonder if there's been a book written about him or written about her. And if I find there is, then I'll probably pick it up and read it, even if I hadn't heard of them before. Number 5, have you ever met someone whose biography or autobiography you had read beforehand? Unfortunately not. However, there are many people I would love to meet having read their autobiographies, no, there's no one I've met whose biography I'd already read. I hope some of you have. That would be really interesting. Number 6. What do you think about books that are described as semi-autobiographical? I like them. However, the problem is that I'm never sure which parts are like, novel and which parts are semi-autobiographical. 2 examples I can think of is Goodbye to Berlin by Christopher Isherwood, which I really enjoyed, and it's meant to be quite biographical, but it is still a novel, so it would be really interesting if you can separate the two. Another one is also The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which sounds strange about such a book to say you enjoyed it, but it was a good read. And again, it's not always easy to separate fact from fiction when these works are described as semi-autobiographical. Number 7, give an example of a life story that really surprised you. I will go with the biography I read of Mozart, and it was written by, in my notes I've written David Suchet, but that's a mistake. I think it's John Suchet, who is the brother of David Suchet. David Suchet, probably as the actor of Hercule Poirot in the Agatha Christie Poirot series. But Mozart by John Suchet. I'd always loved Mozart, even from being a child, but I didn't know really that much about his life. And most of what I did know came from the Milos Forman film Amadeus, based, of course, on Peter Shaffer's play of the same name. So, a lot of that isn't true, even though it's a fantastic film. So reading about his actual life was really quite surprising. And it's an excellent book. And John Suchet writes many other biographies of musical figures, including Beethoven, and I believe Strauss, and maybe some others as well. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would check out his works for sure. Number 8, what biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, etc. are currently on your to-be-read list? Well, I have quite a few, and I can show them to you. I have one here which is called Gweilo, which is about a childhood of an English boy growing up in Hong Kong in the 1950s. I spent a bit of time in Hong Kong myself, and I believe I picked it up there to read it, and I still haven't read it yet, but I'm determined to get to it this year. I think it would be really quite interesting. That's one of them. Continuing with the Chinese theme, and a book actually I also picked up in Hong Kong and need to read, is this one, Dragon Lady, which is the biography of the last Empress of China, and the known as the Dowager Empress. I can never say her name. Tzu Ci, maybe. And she seems a very formidable and remarkable woman, so I definitely want to give that a go. I almost did it for Women's History Month, but it was quite big, so I thought I would save it and come to it a bit later. As I live in the Czech Republic, I wanted to do something Czech, and I really like the book Good Soldier Švejk by Jaroslav Hašek, and so I have a biography about him called The Bad Bohemian, and he had a rather incredible life story which I really look forward to reading, and once I have, I'll certainly come back and tell you all about it if you're interested. Moving just over the border, I have a biography I want to read of Wojtek the bear, who was a real bear, who went through the Second World War with, I don't know whether it was a regiment or he was a mascot for the Polish army basically, and he followed them everywhere they went, and he seems really quite interesting. He went through the war with the Polish army, and then he spent his retirement at Edinburgh Zoo, so I think that would be really interesting. Continuing again with the Czech theme, I'd like to read this book, a biography of the Olympic legend Emil Zatopek. Again, I think that would be fantastic. And another one that's been on my list for a while and I want to get to this year is something like an autobiography by Akira Kurosawa. I really enjoy his films, and I think it would be again a rather interesting read, and it's come to me very highly rated in the past by friends of mine, so I'll certainly give that a go, I hope, this year. Okay, moving on. Number 8, what biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, etc. are currently on your TBR, which I've just done, excuse me, sorry for that. Number 9, whose life story did you find particularly hard going, either emotional or emotionally difficult to read, or very boring? I can't think of one that was really boring, but certainly emotionally difficult to read, I would have to say, is Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. It's a very interesting book, especially the parts about his childhood and boarding school and things when he was a young man in England, but it gets really quite difficult and horrific when you get to the part about his service during the First World War. It certainly stays with you and haunts you quite a long while after reading it, but it is a fantastic autobiography. And Robert Graves, of course, is the man who wrote I, Claudius and other books like that. So, yeah, if you're interested in the First World War and want to read a really good first-hand account, then you should check out Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. Number 10, is there anyone you know personally who you feel should have their life story written down? Well, apart from myself, I would actually go with, it's probably silly answer maybe, but I would actually go for my dad, because he's someone I've always looked up to, and someone I think's had a very interesting life, who's basically traveled the world. He's been in the telecommunications industry for a really long time, and I think the work he did within that would be quite interesting, and also all the experiences he had traveling, dealing with foreign governments, negotiations, places of political unrest and things like that would be really, really interesting. So whether it was written down for a wider audience or written down just for me to read in my old age, I would be very happy with that. Number 11, have you read any diaries or collections of letters? If so, which ones did you find interesting? I haven't read too many. I did go through the letters of an English politician called Alan Clark, which were quite interesting. One I really do like, and I've got a very old decrepit copy here. You can see it's from 1906, and it's the diary of Samuel Pepys, which follows 10 years of his life from 1659 to 1669. And it's a very interesting read, gives a great insight into London during that time, and it was a time of great turmoil from the end of the kind of pseudo-republic that they had through to the restoration of the monarchy under Charles II, and on through past the Great Plague and the Great Fire of London. And lastly, what are a few life stories that you would recommend to us to read? I have a couple here. One is this biography by Fuchsia Dunlop called Shark's Fin and Sichuan Pepper. Very nice book about food and her love affair with Chinese food and the years she spent living in Sichuan province. Very nice memoir. I would definitely recommend it if you want something a little bit different. Another one I really enjoyed was A Traveller's Life by Eric Newby. You might know him from such books as Love in the Apennines and A Short Walk in the Hindu Kush. This is his autobiography, and it's very interesting. He had a very interesting life. Apart from all the travelling, he was in the special forces during the Second World War, and he was captured, and it's a very good read, very good. I really recommend it. And then the last one I would recommend, I mean there are many I could recommend, but these are a few, well, one I have them to hand, so it's nice as well, is this one here. And this is A Happy Odyssey, and it's by General Sir Adrian Carton de Wyatt. Now, Adrian Carton de Wyatt is a really incredible person if you don't know him. He wrote this, his autobiography. If you see this medal here, this is the Victoria Cross, which is the highest medal you can win in the British Army for gallantry. And he doesn't mention it in his autobiography. He never mentions winning it. It's left up to Winston Churchill, who writes the introduction or the foreword to the book, to mention that he won it. Carton de Wyatt is well known for having one of the most badass Wikipedia entries of anybody, because he suffered all sorts of injuries. He was shot in the head. You can see he lost his eye. He shot. I think he must have been shot like 10 different times in all different parts of his body. He lost an arm. Before he did that, he actually ended up biting off the fingers on one of his hands because they wouldn't operate and they'd gone manky or whatever. He actually wrote that he enjoyed the First World War. He goes on to become a general in the Second World War. He's involved in 2 plane crashes. He's a prisoner of war. He escapes from prison, and you can imagine he wanders around like for 2 weeks as a free man. But of course, he's easy to spot. He doesn't speak a word of the local language. He's only got one eye. He's only got one arm. But it's incredible. It's an absolutely incredible bit of military history and a remarkable person that really shows they don't make them like that anymore. So if you want to check it out, check out Happy Odyssey by Sir Adrian Carton de Wyatt. So those are my recommendations. This is my humble offering of a non-fiction tag. I hope you like it, and I hope it was a bit interesting for you. Certainly I'm interested to see what some of you come up with. I will tag Steve Donahue, Vin, of course, at Revenant Reads, as he inspired me to do this, Summer at Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats, Becky and Scott at the Bookish Bryants, and Bill Rattenberg at the Rattenberg Library. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe, well, and healthy, and I'll see you next time. All the best. Bye-bye.